Hey guys, welcome back into the Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game up on the tabletop is called VikingJarl, and it's for 2 to 4 players, past 60 minutes to play, and ages 12 and up. In VikingJarl, you're going to be playing as a Viking tribe. You're going to have 2 different portions of that though. You've got your ships, and then you've got your army. Your army can fit on your ship, and it'll take a space in your ship to actually house your army, but it is able to travel on land and move around places. Your ship, however, will be going through the sea. You can take and drop off your army, and your objective is to collect victory points. You can collect them from different ports, you can build your own settlements, and you can go ahead and raid other people's items and whatnot. Your objective is to get money, and which places buying goods as well as buying other things, and you'll be able to gain upgrade cards throughout the game to achieve your goal, which is gather the most points. And depending on how long you want the game to be, you can set up your own point up to 27 points, and the recommended starting level is about 11, and you can play up to 4 different tribes going around. You're all going to start in a specific area though, and as you go throughout the game, you're going to be drawing these cards, and eventually you're going to come across cards like the gods are angry or Ragnarok, and these will happen at the end to late game. So let me go ahead and show you VikingJarl as well as all of the pieces included. Alright, so here we have VikingJarl, and it's 4 players, so you've got black, yellow, red, and blue, as well as everybody's going to get their character boards, and tells you what they do, how they function, the different phases, and what goes on. It's very, very nice and simple though. So I also include 3 of these little guys here, which will be able to give you ports and stuff like that whenever you acquire them, as well as these things over here. These are going to be how you place down your ports. So if this space here you were able to collect, you put it right over here and you would earn that spot. So these pieces are included. Also these little chips here, or these little squares here, where you got wood and the other 2 pieces, whatever they're called. It's like a horn, it looks like, and a hammer, and I think they're called metal and silver or something like that. And then you've got your dice. This is over here is going to be your attacker dice and your defense dice, and it works similar to Risk, in where you're going to be rolling dice based on the number of people you have, and your opponent will roll up to 3 dice based on the number of people he has, and defender always wins on tie. Get your battle zone for your NPCs, whether they're attacking or defending, as well as I guess you could use them for your own. You've got the different locations on the board, and for setup it's pretty simple. Everybody's going to get 4 dudes, and you can put them in your army or in your ship in any way you want, except for that space there, which is reserved for only your army, which is placed just like that. And you can move them however you want. Then you're also going to be given 2 dudes, which are your armies, and 2 boats, and you just put them here in the middle anywhere you want, doesn't matter. You're also going to give out all these player boards to everybody, as well as a certain amount of cards. In the game, you're going to take half of the deck and take these cards here, which are going to be the gods are angry and Ragnarok. Put them in there, shuffle up this deck right here to make sure that they're in the bottom half, and then put the next deck on top of it. Over here, you're going to be putting the little tokens here representing basically these tokens here, and they're going to be different for different things. This one here is when you're going to go ahead and buy certain things. You can try and buy stuff to make your city grow. You've got these locations here which you can raid. These things are also similar to these ones here. You've got the main port, which is in Kwapong, which is where all the Vikings go. You can go back and forth, and you'll be able to using this spot for a lot of different things. And as you see, these ones over here are for victory points here. So you've got settlements, you got trade routes, and then you've got pillaging things over here. And then it tells you also prices for goods and whatnot. You'll be able to purchase certain things depending on where you go. And yeah, that's pretty much how you set the game. Put a couple points over here so that whenever you get to these far edges of the board, you'll be able to gain these victory points. But whenever you go to certain locations, you'll be going ahead and collecting these and gaining victory points. And that's basically the idea of the game. So how do the turns work? So to begin the game, you're going to be getting silver, and the first player will start with 1, the second will start with 2, and it's 1 additional for every player. You're also going to get 3 saga cards, and these are cards that are going to let you do actions either on your turn or on another player's turn. On another player's turn, you can only use 1 card, however, on your turn you can use as many as you like, provided that you're able to do so. All the cards will be fairly simple, so you can actually pretty much understand when you can use them and when you can't. On everybody's board, as well as the main board itself, it tells you how to play the game, and it's fairly simple, right? You're going to draw a saga card at the beginning of your turn, and then after that, you're going to choose to either move or recruit. If you don't move, you can recruit for free, and that lets you put 1 dude either on your ship or army. You can do both, but if you move either one of them, you cannot recruit for free. After you go ahead and move, you can perform an action, and that'll let you pillage something, so rolling dice to kill settlements and obtain victory points, as well as trading, and that'll let you either build certain things or trade your silver for other things like wood and brass and all that kind of stuff. or simply attacking. And you can attack settlements, pillage areas, as well as you can attack the other players too, which is kind of cool. The only thing you can't do is be on the same space as another player. After you're done doing that, you're going to discard down to 3 cards. So you're always going to have that, and sometimes discarding cards will give you silver, and the next player is going to go. And periodically, as you go throughout your turn, you're going to collect victory points, and the game is going to be based on the main portion of the game is going to be based on collecting those points and setting up how much points you want to have in order for the game to end, right? And once some player gets that certain victory point, that's when the game is over and that player has won, although there are a couple variants which I'll discuss in a bit. Let me show you a couple turns of how it's played. Okay, so we're back to the board again, and Red has acquired his guys. He's going to do 2 and 2. They both do that. He's the first player, so he's going to get 1 silver, and he will get 2. And these are your settlements, like I said before. If somebody attacks them, they get burned, though, and you'll lose those victory points until you reestablish your colony once again. And everybody starts in this space. It's all just a singular space pretty much right here. On his turn, or on everybody's turn, they're going to start with their 3 saga cards, and you make sure to shuffle and deal them out correctly, unlike myself. But you're going to draw a card. That's his first thing he's going to do. He's going to then look at these cards. Some of them will let him discard these cards for victory points, like this defense card for Heimdall. It will simply let him discard the card if he wants and move his character up. However, using the card is very powerful as well. It lets you cancel scary cards that other players could play on you, like Odin's Wrath here. This one actually does cancel this card, which is nice. Choose another Jarl to lose a victory point. So in turn, it's kind of a back and forth kind of a thing here. If you keep it, you won't lose a point, but if you get rid of it, you'll gain a point. So these kind of cancel each other out. You got long ships. These are going to let you transport Vikings or goods from Kwapang to anywhere where you need to be. And then you got stuff like this, a shield wall used in defense, lets you roll additional die. So these are all very useful. I think because he has both of these cards, he's just going to go ahead and discard this card in hopes that nobody else has this, because it's very unlikely for them to do so. So he moves this guy up 1 victory point, and if we're playing an 11-point game, that's 1 point closer, which is really nice because it's a really quick game at 11 points. Then he's going to be able to use his character or characters. Right now he's got his little army on his ship, and so he would actually go ahead and put this right here. This is his army space, and then he's going to be able to move, and it tells you their movement right down here on the board. The ship can move 3 and the army can move 2. If he wants, he can release his army and just drop it down. Basically, they've unloaded. If whenever you unload, it's going to be one movement and then it stops. You can't use both movements whenever you unload or reload your character. However, if he was already here, he'd be able to move 2 if he wanted to. So just be aware of that little rule. So if he wanted to, he could do that, and then he could sail his ship. Maybe he could go 1, 2, and 3, right? Also note that whenever you're on a port and you need to move off the port onto the sea, it's going to cost you 1. A better example would be here. If he was on this Haltland area, he'd have to actually move down here first because he needs to get off the port, and then he can continue with his movement, which would be 3 there. So now that's being said. Now actually we'll just go ahead and keep this guy on the ship, so we'll put him back, and we'll have him move 1 and 2 and then 3. He can go to Ribe, and whenever he goes to location, he's going to simply turn it over, and that will mean he can actually go ahead and collect. He can trade for this right here. It'll cost him 2, and he'll get this resource, and it tells you up here what they cost. So you'll know how to do that, and after you get all 3 of them, you'll be able to build your own settlement. Alright, so after he's done that, he can also unload his unit here, his army if he wants, and just puts it right here, and that would be the end of his turn. If he had more than 3 of his cards, these little saga cards here, he had to discard down 2, 3, and then the next player would get to go. And the next player, he could go 1, 2, and he can go over here. And he can also, he flipped this over, it would work, it would function the same basically, and this shows a 2 on it, which means if he wants to fight to gain these victory points, he'll have to choose either ship or army, because they're both here, he can choose either one, and he will roll dice. You got the attacker and the defender, and you would roll dice, and then you would compare. You always do highest to highest and lowest to lowest, and defender wins ties. So in this instance, green would take red, and then red would take green, so they would both lose 1. And you could also place that like that. You could actually even simplify it by showing it like this, right? So okay, he had this he had 2 and he had 2, so he would lose 1 and he would lose 1. It tells you how many die you get to roll as well, and so they go down to 1 each, and you would roll that, and then 3 is going to take 1, so that would destroy that. This would be gone, and he would gain 2 victory points, moving himself up on the tracker 2, which is pretty cool. Now he could also go ahead and let this guy off, but there's really no point to do that. There's nothing else more here for him, so he would just end his turn. Also, don't forget though, he's going to be able to draw his saga card at the beginning here, as well as if he wanted to play anything, he could do that. He could also do something like the discard. Both of these let him discard for silver, so he could go ahead and do that, discard that for 2 silver. and collect that there. And then the next turn would continue, and you could then, at that point, start moving characters separately from each other. If you ever wanted to come back, though, and pick them up, you can come back and pick them up anywhere on the board. Not only that, though, but these guys can't go onto onto certain locations, most likely, or I guess actually this can go anywhere, basically. It's just going to take him longer than maybe something like this would. This is easier for him to get to here than it would be for him to get over there. Nevertheless, though, you basically have free reign to go where you want. If you were going to go over here, you could fight. And instead of fighting for victory points, which I showed you here, you could actually fight for currency. And it's going to be based on the number of guys you have remaining after you fight here. So if he had 4 guys and he rolled his 4 dice for green, he would get to roll 1, and he destroyed him. So he would actually gain 4 currency, and if it was a set of 2 here, he would gain 8 currency, and that's for the silver, so he can build his populace. Now, another thing too, let's pretend like Blue has succeeded in getting enough resources. He's got all 3 here from going over here, or maybe he was over here and here. So these 3 actually is all you need. It will cost you 6 silver. Maybe he went here and he captured this point, he gained his 2 victory points, spent his 3 currency, and remember, whenever you gain currency, you have to actually be able to hold them on your ship. Now, this location here is only good for your army, but let's say he only had 1 guy, because a couple of guys die, that's how Vikings go. He had all these 3, which he's going to need. He could then get rid of these and settle this location. That would cost him an action as well. He would look for the specific location here, and it would tell you how many victory points you get, and you'd place it on the board just like that. And it would count as his location. He would take this, put it there, and move up 4 points on the board. Pretty simple. And that's how you're going to be getting points in this game. Fighting these guys here and getting colonies here, as well as discarding cards. As you saw, there's a couple of them you can discard. Now, also to note too, this guy over here on his turn, he could simply go over here and fight this guy based on the number of units he left on here, because he can actually leave units on here if he wants to defend against people. However, maybe you just left 1. This guy could roll 2, fight 1. However it's going to work. And if he wins, this location gets flipped over and it's burning, and he loses his 4 points until he comes back here and regains it. Now note, 2 players can always be on the same space in any location except for when one character is on a territory or one of these ports or a trade route. You can't be on the same area there. So if he was in the water here and he was here, that'd be fine, but you couldn't actually fight a location where when there's already a blue guy stationed there. And yeah, the board gets smaller when there's multiple players. But as you can see, that's the main aspects of the game. Another little quick thing is if you get to these locations, if you travel all the way across the world, you're going to gain free victory points just for being there. But your main objective is to gain settlements, to increase your score, making sure nobody destroys them, as well as defeating other players for victory points, and to get the resources you need to fight and pillage other people. So that is the basic idea of VikingJarl. You play until somebody reaches 11 points or 27, or a choice that you make up of your own, as well as there's also some variants that will invite this little VikingJarl piece involve turns. But that is the basic aspect of how to play that VikingJarl. Okay, so a couple caveats to make even more description for the game. Now, you can only pick up your army when they are at a port. So you can't just pick them up in the middle of a continent, obviously. You have to pick them up in a location that is next to the water. So just in case that got a little confusing for you, now you know. Also, in Kopang or any of your other owned locations where you put your symbol on, you're able to recruit, and you can recruit 3 units per character at the location. However, you can't recruit 6 on the same location, I don't think. You might be able to. But I know for a fact that if you have 1 character in Kopang and 1 character in your own territory, you can get up to 6 units by not moving, and it's for free recruiting units. Pretty cool. As well as storing units. You can store units in Kopang. You can store even resources as well, which is pretty cool. And it's transport them back and forth, and some of the cards will let you do that. Speaking of cards, I didn't go over enough of them, so I'm going to explain a couple of them to you. Loki the Trickster, you can choose another Jarl that you can take 1 saga card from, and you draw it from your opponent. You can also discard this card for a victory point. Pretty sweet. Freya, you can enter any settlement or town where another Jarl is located. So this is this is basically changing the rule, right, of the game. Whenever the card says to change it, you listen to the card, right? The ship and or army must move out to a nearby land or sea. You can also discard this for 2 silver. You got Ragnarok. This happens at mid to the end of the game. This card must be read out at once as soon as you draw it. Applies to all Jarls. All Jarls lose all their saga cards except for 1. Pick 1 saga you want to keep and put the rest in the discard pile. Then reshuffle the discard pile deck into the deck. Reshuffle the discard pile into the deck. So that keeps the game flowing, and you're never going to run out of cards in the deck, which is cool. The gods are angry. This must be read out at once as soon as you draw it, right? You have made the gods angry, and to please them, you have to sacrifice 3 Vikings. So they're going to have to go to Ragnarok. If you don't lose 3 Vikings, you lose a victory point, and you can draw a saga card afterwards. And there's 2 of those in there. They're nasty. Better be careful in drawing them. Pirates. You can loot another Jarl at sea if you are in the same sea zone. The opponent rolls a die, and it can either be averted, or they're going to lose a silver, or 3 silver, or a good, depending on what they roll. Shield wall, like I said, you can play more cards there, play more dice, throw more dice when defending, which is pretty cool. This one here is Barrage. Your army are well fed and rested. Use a saga to move 1 extra zone. So that's pretty sweet. You can make your army move farther. You can also use this to cancel the saga Azir, or Azure, I hope I'm saying that right. Discard this for 2 silver as well. So 3 different options on that card. And finally, the defense cards, which I've already showed you before, but it cancels a card, or it also gives you a victory point. And there's quite a few others in the deck. You probably will not go through the deck in a single game, unless you're playing probably a 4-player game. The last thing to mention, actually I think I mentioned all 3 things, basically. Ports is how you pick up your armies. You can stash different units as well as goods on your area, as well as on Kopang, as well as a bunch of the different cards you get to see. The couple other variants in the game is when using this little tracker here, it'll track the turns of the game, and you can actually go throughout a certain amount of turns as opposed to trying to get to a certain amount of victory points, and these will be considered the victory points you're going to be gaining. So you can do it that way or the other way, right? Just gaining points as you go, or every single turn, once you get 10 turns, whoever has the most points wins that way. So either way is kind of going to work for you. But anyway, that is how you play VikingJarl. Let me tell you what I think about it. Alright, so what do I think about VikingJarl? Well, the first thing I want to say is it has a risk combat style, right? It has the mechanisms for risk. If you have 4 guys, you roll 4 dice. If you have 2 guys, you roll 2 dice. If you're attacking, use the attacking dice. If you're defending, you use the defending dice. Defenders always win ties. If you like this mechanic, continue. If you don't like this mechanic, you're not going to like this game. That's the first thing straight up, because people have that upswing on some of the risk style mechanics, and some have the downswing on it. So I just want to make that clear. You're all going to start on the same location of the board, and the first player gets a decrease in silver, and every other player gets more, but the first player gets to pick a location first, which can be very beneficial for them. So when you're playing with a 4-player game, the game is going to be very condensed, and you're going to have a lot more fighting going on. In a 2-player game, you can actually stay away from each other and almost never fight each other if you want. So you can make it more about Euro style as opposed to a combat game. But when you get into the 4-player game, it's almost impossible not to fight. So you have to enjoy that aspect of the game if you want to play with more than 2 players. There's a lot of options on your turn that you can do. You can go ahead and go to a port and gain victory points by fighting. You can pillage for silver. You can place locations down, and you can trade goods. And those are the 4 main things you can do other than just fighting each other. And it does work to a good degree. I enjoyed the game in the fact that there's a lot of options on my turn. I can use 2 different types of units, and they function similarly yet differently, and the cards have a nice role in the game. I think I would relate this game similar to a game like Risk, but it has more functionality, it has more features, and it reduces the amount of luck in the game based on what you're trying to do. There is a lot of politicking in a larger player game, and there is a lot more trying to avoid the losing player if you're the main player, and trying to counter the main player if you're the losing player. I'm sure there's other players that play differently, but that is what I've noticed through my plays of the game. The combat works fine. It's a tried and true method that's worked for a while. The theme of the game is Vikings, and you do feel like a Viking. It has a good theme to it, and it functions correctly. You're moving around, pillaging, and compiling resources to build your new settlements. You can be friendly with people in trade, but you can also be ruthless. And because I have a degree in pagan studies, or pagan culture, which is not to be confused with witches and warlocks and whatnot, but it's actually with pre-Roman era and that kind of stuff, I do really enjoy the theme of this game. I like being able to place these on the board and gain the victory points for them, as well as putting my units on there and all that kind of stuff. It does feel like I am a Viking, and I like that aspect. Some critiques of the game would be, obviously, the risk combat feature. If you don't like that, you probably won't like this game. These pieces here, some of them are 6 points and 5 and 4. I'm not sure if you're supposed to look at them or not. Obviously it's the same resources to build wherever, and I think it's going to be based on placement. So if you're farther away and protected, it's going to maybe be less points, or if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's going to be more points. I'm not exactly sure how that functions. It took us a little bit to grasp the game and how it functioned correctly based on the rules, but I think with this video, if you're watching right now, it'll give you a full understanding of how to play the game. Once we got it down though, very simple, very streamlined, and I really liked the cards. They were a lot of fun, and they have it back and forth, and they are very, very balanced, which is pretty cool. So if you like a Viking themed game that has a mix of Risk as well as a mix of a little bit of a Euro style game, but we were trying to acquire points with a very, very thinned down amount of time to play the game, you're going to enjoy VikingJarl. I think this game is solid. It's right down the middle for me. It's a game I would definitely play if asked, and yeah, good game. VikingJarl. Thanks for watching another Unfiltered Gamer board game review. If you like this video, go ahead and check out the rest of our videos here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment. It all helps, as well as checking out VikingJarl on Kickstarter. It's coming out, or it's already out. Check it out in the description below. If you like the Viking theme, you like a solid little Risk-style shortened length game that has a good mixture of things, you'll probably enjoy this game. Also, go ahead and check out our website, unfilteredgamer.com. We got tons of blog posts, giveaways, Kickstarter lists, and more, as well as a featured artist page coming soon. So if you got somebody you need art for them, we're going to have that commission stuff going on. If you're an artist, go ahead and contact us, and we will go ahead and put your picture and all your good stuff, your contacts and all that in our website for free. No problems, no questions, just putting it in there. Also, go ahead and check out our friends and promotional guys work together at everythingboardgames.com, the giveaway geek, and my personal friend Ferdinand, the cardboard stacker. He does some great tutorials. Alright guys, that's all I got for this one, and as always, I look forward to seeing you next time.